Somewhere else fly box. As a follow-up to my pheasant tail dubbing, I want to share the pheasant tail version or variation that I tie 90% of the time. I tend to tie this primarily without a bead and fish it with split shot. I do tie one with a copper bead and just a standard collar, but this is the variation of the pheasant tail that I've been tying for quite some time now. I start out with a size 14 as a rule. I'll go down as situation requires, but as a rule I tie them primarily in size 14. And .015 lead substitute wire. I'll start my wire even with the point of the shank or point of the hook. Give 7 wraps. I start it even with the point of the hook as habit because I slide it to approximately 2 eye lengths behind the eye after I wrap, and then start my thread. I use A-dot black uni thread. I start it in the middle to hold it in place. Move to the front, build a dam. Move to the back, build a dam. Then overwrap it a little bit, and then move to the rear. First material you're going to tie in is pheasant tail fiber. This is a true to form faux pheasant tail, if you wanted to call it that. And I start out with about probably half dozen fibers, and that's pretty much what I stick with no matter what the size of the fly is. If I'm tying a size 18, I still put about half dozen fibers. I think a substantial tail shows up a little bit better. I measure it to the shank length, just the shank, not the hook. And then bring my thread back to the bend and tie it in. I don't worry about tying it immediately at the bend because I'm going to wrap back to that point. And then I'm going to bring my thread forward again, leaving those butts there because I want them there. And then I'm going to tie in my wire. I use fine copper wire. I tie in right behind the lead, the side of the hook, and I wrap back again to the end of the shank. And then I'm going to bring my thread forward, and I'm going to use my butt sections of my pheasant tail fibers to help build that transition. And I'm going to bring my pheasant tail fibers to about the middle of the lead. That's why I position the lead and I tie a specific amount of wraps, because it works for me here. And next we're going to dub our abdomen. I use my own pheasant tail dubbing. That's posted on the site as well, the blend. The blend is 2 parts beaver, 1 part woodchuck, fiber and or underfur, and 1 part peacock ice dub and 1 part olive ice dub. If you're looking for that recipe, there is a blog entry from this past week on there. And then we're going to wrap back to the back, and we're going to dub Not a real big body. Keep it fairly slender. And we're going to bring it up to that midway point. And got just a little bit too much there, so we'll pull that off. And then we're going to wrap our copper wire forward. Evenly spaced. Should get 3 or 4 evenly spaced wraps proportionately. And then I bring my wire in front of the butt sections of my pheasant tail. And bring my thread around at one time if I can get my butt sections to let go. And I'm going to grab my butt sections and I'm going to pull them back. I'm going to wrap back in to my abdomen. I like to wrap back into the abdomen at almost, probably I split the first or the last 2 wraps of the wire. I do not, if you don't, you end up with a little bit of a separation in the abdomen, and I don't want that. I want it to be a clean taper and a nice transition. And then once we got our butt sections back there, we're going to dub the thorax, the same dubbing. I don't change. You can use wax for this if it gets a little unruly. The beaver can require you sometimes use wax. And if I'm tying smaller flies, I wax the thread and touch dub, just because this dubbing doesn't twist with saliva when you're trying to put real small amounts. I tend to like to touch dub a little bit of wax and then spin it. And we're going to bring our dubbing forward. And I want a little bit more. I want my thorax to be substantial, not giant, but I want it to be noticeably heavier than the abdomen. And bring your thread up to just behind the eye, leaving yourself a little space. And then I pull my pheasant tail over in a wing case. Pretty standard fly. You'll see it tied in 1,000 variations, different colors. Very common technique. The only difference with this, really, no difference in technique, are the materials to match a particular pattern. I don't use the pheasant tails for legging. That's not my goal with this fly. This picks out perfectly without it. And then before I pick my legging out, we are going to do a touch of head cement on that wing case. Put a little Sally Henson's on there. Give that just a couple seconds to harden. Soak into the thread as well. And then we'll pick out the dubbing just a little bit. With this dubbing, it doubles as your legging as well. I don't pick out the bottom, I just pick out the sides a little bit. And there it is. A faux pheasant tail, if you want to call it that. The dubbed variation, still using the pheasant tail for 2 parts of the fly. But the one that I prefer when the situation calls for a pheasant tail nymph, and there are situations where you want a pheasant tail nymph or a like design nymph, this is what I reach for and tie and keep in my box. And this is the original fly that I created to blend for the pheasant tail dubbing to begin with. I hope it adds to your box. Please check out the dubbing blog entry as well, and I hope this fly adds to your box and your time on the water. Good luck and thank you.